best definitions of resilience that I know of is that resilience is the ability of a system to withstand disorder. So you can look at that at various different levels of scale. So you can talk about individual resilience being the body's immune system. And then you can look at it on a community level where you can talk about things like food security. And then when you scale up to an ecological system or the planetary system, then you can talk about biodiversity. And that ability to scale, I think, is one of the things that makes resilience a really powerful concept, because it's meaningful at each of those different levels. And one thing I really like about it is that you can, it's kind of a one-sided argument that you can take to people. I've been involved in talking and planning for resilience in the West Marin area of California, and the idea of resilience is something that pretty much everybody in that community can respond to. So in a community where there's really quite different segments of society, you've got very wealthy ranchers, you've got a kind of Mexican underclass, and you've got kind of lots of different people in between those extremes. That's something that all of those people can understand. So you can have meaningful dialogue about resilience with people of all ideological persuasions. And I kind of disagree with you a little bit about resilience not always being good. I think that generally speaking, that resilience in a system is a good thing. And that's one of the things that I think is really significant about it, and that it is the fact that it's become a new buzzword is a really good thing, I think. I think it contains real meaning. Whereas when people talk about sustainability, it's been very easy to kind of greenwash that word and turn it into sustainable growth and to sustainable tourism. Whereas resilience does have a kind of core meaning to it. And of course there are people that are using it to describe things like you're talking about, but generally speaking, I think that it's a very powerful concept for this particular time.
Do you want to come back on that?
Well, just only in that I think, yeah, I mean, you're right. I think if we get resilience right, but I suppose that there are different people who have different versions of what resilience. We would have in this room an idea of what a resilient community would be, which we would almost all, I would imagine, agree is a good thing. But actually, it is possible when you read some of the government. Like every county has a resilience committee or something who are put through the government who have to produce resilience strategies for some of those places. And actually some of the things that are talked about in there, which they would argue make the place more resilient, are things that we would sort of find quite abhorrent. So although we would agree a vision of what resilience is that we would think we would agree with to be a good thing, actually it's possible if you come at resilience from a very kind of fear-based angle that it's about something absolutely horrible, that we're all going to get bird flu in the next 3 weeks, that some of those things that would emerge through that aren't necessarily positive and desirable things.
Sure. If I can respond to that, I think that it's sure, resilience is definitely about preparing for disorder, and that means that that's a very wide range of things. Some of those are really unpleasant. But what I have noticed is that it's a dialogue that you could then take to people in emergency preparedness committees. You can take it to government departments that are dealing with those kinds of issues, and people like the fire departments and people who are doing those kind of work. So it's a way of outreaching to those people and perhaps expanding their idea of what resilience actually means.
Yeah, my colleague, a colleague of mine at Transition Network, Ben Branklin, was talking to somebody who was from some emergency preparedness thing and talking about Devon, and he was saying, oh yeah, we've done a resilience plan for Devon, it's all fine. And Ben said, oh, so what about the food? Food, yeah. It was big on one thing, but they hadn't even thought about how we're going to feed everybody. So it's getting everything in there, like you say. I think resilience is a very useful common language to come at those things and to say, have you thought about the food?
Yeah. I think DEFRA's view has been that sourcing bananas from 5 countries rather than 3 is about resilience.
Yeah, that's the definition of resilience, is if you get your bananas from 20 countries rather than 10, you're more resilient.
Patrick?
I'd just like to respond to what Rob said about different kinds of resilience. It just strikes me, without thinking about it very deeply, that the kind of bad resilience that you were talking about, trying to prevent terrorism, prevent hacking and things like that, is not actually what I mean by resilience. That is more of an effort to keep things the way they are, keep these bad people out. Resilience is more like sort of rolling with the blow. It's accepting that things are not going to be the same as they are, and say, okay, how do we respond to that? And I think this is where it gets scary, because my personal conviction is that we have totally lost the plot on climate change. It's going to happen, and it's going to go to its fullest extreme. And, you know, I think the Copenhagen conference made that fairly clear, where sort of the world collectively decided not to do anything about it. But if you look at it at a personal level as well, to take one example, flying. You know, flying is probably the test of how committed people are to doing something about global warming. It's completely unnecessary. You know, we have to feed ourselves, we have to clothe ourselves, we have to house ourselves. We don't have to fly. A couple of years ago, I went to a short course for transition activists. And people had come from all over the country to attend this course on transition activists. And at the beginning of the course, we had this rather good little exercise where each person who feels moved to do so moves into the middle of the circle and says their name, says, I do such and such, or I'm passionate about such and such, and anyone else who can make that statement about themselves moves in to join them. I went into the centre of this circle of committed transition activists, you know, the ones who bothered to travel out of their area to come to this special course, creme de la creme. I said, I'm Patrick, and I've given up flying. And how many do you think joined me? One. We haven't got a snowball's chance in hell. I mean, if you want me to go further, I can start talking about positive feedbacks. You know, I mean, we've probably lost the plot already. So, you know, I think we need to face up to the fact that actually we are on the threshold of absolutely enormous changes. Kind of changes that we can't even imagine. And this is why we need resilience. And of course, in the face of all that, we're not going to have the energy that we've been used to in order to solve any problem that crops up, you know, throw fossil fuel at it, which is what we all do. And so, you know, that's my feeling about resilience. It's not a matter of trying to keep things the same. It's a matter of rolling with the blow, however heavy that blow may be.
I was actually going to say something really similar around the whole kind of, again, thinking about the personal resilience. It's this sense of, well, kind of moving back to what Mark was saying about, you know, whether is resilience always a good thing, you know, and is it always okay, and or is sometimes it's not, you know, it's bad, it's challenging. And I think this for me is the sort of conceptualization that we need to move beyond, because we kind of have developed this culture that we want everything to be comfortable all the time, you know, we want everything to be good all the time, and we want all our creature comforts, and you know, and so we seem to have lost touch with what's real, and actually there's so much to be said for actually going through the hard times, whether that's physically or emotionally, because the richness that comes from that is incredible, you know, and as Patrick's been saying, it's not being attached to having to be the same or being a certain way, because that's just not the nature of things, that's not the nature of life. So I think, you know, it's just so important for us to realise that, you know, that it's not going to look a certain way, and that, again, for us to be able to step up to these changes, we have to have that inner resilience to not need certain things. You know, okay, we have basic needs for food, for water, for shelter, for clothing, but beyond that, the other stuff, these are our projected needs. These are the things that we're kind of feeling we need because our ego's going, eek, you know, I need some, like, you know, something to make me feel okay, and for me, again, that brings it back to this nature connection, because it's our disconnection from nature that has kind of generated this sense of lack within us. Actually, what we have when we connect with nature is a realization of the absolute abundance that surrounds us all the time. But when we disconnect from nature, then suddenly we're constantly feeling like we're lacking something, we need something. And I feel that the question around flying is really, really useful, because if you force yourself to ask the question of why do you feel that you need to fly, and you can ask it about anything that you've got in your life that actually isn't really serving the purpose that you feel you should be fulfilling, that isn't allowing you to be congruent between your head, your heart and your hands, why are you not doing that? And it's always because we have this perceived sense of lack, that we need something. We've always got a justification, like that if for whatever reason, but I've got this, or maybe I've got kids, or in my case I've got ME, so I'm tired, I need to be able to do that. But we've all got our own personal excuse for why we're allowed to do it. And for me, the journey has been about really trying to look at that and to really take responsibility and look at, how do I move from a place of constantly feeling this perceived sense of need and to respond to this perception around lack. How can I really generate that sense of fulfillment within myself and not need all this outside stuff? So yeah, I guess the message from me is around resilience not always being easy, but that we can overcome that and make it easier by letting go of the attachments, but also by realising what richness comes, whether that's societally or individually, from being prepared to go through the hard times. We all know that if we give something up for a while, how much more you appreciate it. I mean, I think it's the same if you've been willing to surrender to dark times, like the euphoria that then follows that from being prepared to go there is immense. And I think societally, that's where we're at. We have to accept that we've taken ourselves to this point in time. We've got ourselves into a right old pickle. But the thing that can follow that is immense. The richness that will follow if we transcend that is immense.